Okay, live stream is rolling. At this time, will all sergeants please start recording?
PC recording all set.
Thank you.
Backup is rolling.
And cloud is on the way. Good morning and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing for the Subcommittee on Zoning and Franchises. At this time, would all panelists please turn on their videos for verification purposes. To minimize disruption upon speaking, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you'd like to submit testimony, please send via email to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation, Chair Riley. We are ready to begin.
Good morning and welcome to a meeting of the Subcommittee of Zoning and Franchise. I'm Councilmember Kevin Riley, Chair of the Subcommittee. I'm joined today by Councilmember Shulman, Hanks, Chair Lewis, Councilmember Moya, Councilmember Carr, Councilmember Abreu. Today we will hold public hearing on two rezoning proposals, 97-04 Suffolk Boulevard and 98-81 Queens Boulevard, both in Queens. Before we begin, I recognize the Subcommittee Council to review the hearing procedures.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I am Angelina Martinez Rubio, counsel to the subcommittee. Members of the public wishing to testify were asked to register for today's hearings. If you wish to testify and have not already registered, please do so by visiting the New York City Council website, www.council.nyc.gov/land-use to sign up. Members of the public may also view a live stream broadcast of this meeting at the council's website. As a technical note for the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible presentation of any of the presentations shown today, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. When called to testify, individuals appearing before the subcommittee will remain muted until recognized by the chair to speak. Applicant teams will be recognized as a group and called first, followed by members of the public. When the chair recognizes you, your microphone will be unmuted. Please take a moment to check your device and confirm that your mic is on before you begin speaking. Public testimony will be limited to 2 minutes per witness. If you have additional testimony you would like the subcommittee to consider, or if you have written testimony you would like to submit instead of appearing here before the subcommittee, you may email it to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Please indicate the LU number and/or project name in the subject line of your email. During the hearing, council members with questions appearing remotely should use the Zoom raise hand function, which appears at the bottom of either your participant panel or the primary viewing window. Council members with questions will be announced in order as they raise their hands, and Chair Riley will then recognize members to speak. Witnesses are requested to remain in the meeting until excused by the chair, as council members may have questions. Finally, there will be pauses over the course of this meeting for various technical reasons, and we ask that you please be patient as we work through any issues. Chair Riley will now continue with today's agenda items.
Thank you, Council. And for the record, I don't know if I announced, but we also are joined by Councilmember Botcher. I will continue today's meeting with opening the public hearing on LUs 26 and 27 relating to the 98-81 Queens Boulevard proposal in Councilmember Shulman's district in Queens. This application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone an existing R7-1 district to an R8X/C2-4 district and a related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program area utilizing option 1 and 2. For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/land-use. I would like to allow Councilmember Shulman to give any brief remarks before we allow the panel to discuss. Councilmember Shulman.
Yes, thank you, Chair Riley. I want to say good morning to you and to my colleagues. I want to also thank the staff for their very hard work on all of this. A lot of community concern has been raised about this project. Since taking office in January, I've had several discussions with the developer, and I'm pleased that we have made some progress, the most substantial of which is the agreement to add deeper affordable housing opportunities to the project, which is option 1. With that, I would like to get clarification on various aspects of the project and will reserve my questions until after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shulman. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
Panel for this item includes Eric Palatnik, Alvin Shine, Jay Marcus, Luigi Russo, Andrew Villari, and Austin Curry.
Thank you. Council, please administer the affirmation.
Applicants, I will call on each and you individually to answer the following question. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this subcommittee and in your answers to all council member questions? Eric Palatnik. Eric, you're muted.
Of course, rookie mistake.
Did you say I do? I didn't hear it. All right, thank you. Alvin Shine.
I do.
Jay Marcus.
I do.
Luigi Russo.
He will not be testifying and he's not logged in.
Oh, okay. Apologies for that. Andrew Villari.
I do.
And Austin Curry.
I also want to testify.
Yeah,
He's just scribing. Okay. So that's the full panel. They're sworn in, so you can, Chair, you can continue.
Thank you, Council. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask you to please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
Thank you very much, Chair Riley. My name is Eric Palatnik, and it is a pleasure to meet you and each of the members of the committee. Recognizing this historic moment, this is the first time I'm appearing in front of this committee, and I've learned a lot about everybody on it, and I'm hopeful that we'll make great opportunities for people in the city of New York with the team that you've assembled. This application, if whoever's controlling the screen may pull up the screen, I will start to speak about it while I'm introducing it. There you go. The site that you're looking at that we're here to represent in front of you right now is the ask for a rezoning, and the site is currently zoned R7, R7-1 to be exact, with a commercial overlay. You can see it right with a C12 commercial overlay. You can see it here situated on Queens Boulevard. And if you can go to the next slide, please. The next slide describes what we're asking you to do with that piece of property. Queens Boulevard, as many of you I'm sure have noticed throughout the decades, really has not seen much new development despite its expansive scope and its proximity to mass transit. The reason for that really is that the R7-1 zoning that's in place along much of it does not justify the investment that needs to be made by any developers. You see very many sites like this along Queens Boulevard. Then on the boulevard itself are one-story buildings, but yet you step back to the side streets and you see the brick buildings that were built in the 1960s, 50s, and 40s. Very little new development along Queens Boulevard. That's why we're here today. We're here to ask for an exciting opportunity with a very cooperative local developer to build a 15-story mixed-use building, which is a shorter building than could be built under the R7-1 zoning. It would create, if it was approved, 144 apartments. Of those 144 apartments, 36 would be affordable at MIH option level 1. I didn't need to read the real deal to know that that's where we should be, and hopefully we can create more opportunity for even more affordability as time goes on, and we all work together, as I alluded to further. But on this project, we are at option 1 with 144 dwelling units, 36 of which are affordable. And also on the call with us is an affordability expert, Alvin Shine, and Jay Marcus of the Fifth Avenue Committee, who's the not-for-profit administrator, and they could speak more to the affordability. If you go to the next slide, please. While that's flipping over, I will say we are on Community Board 6. Next slide, please. In Queens. And we're also resting, of course, within Borough President Donovan Richards' district. Both of those organizations voted to oppose the application with the condition that the affordability level be dropped from what was then proposed to be option 2. Pardon us, that was a holdover from the last administration, and we immediately changed it after much work and communication with the community board, with the council person, with the borough president's office, and it was brought down to option level 1. You can see the site right here. We're proposing to put a 15-story building on this 1-story building. Anybody that's in there right now as an existing business has been spoken to. As I'm sure you are all alert to, rezonings move glacially slow. This has been in the works for 4 years. Many of those years in front of Community Board 6. There is only one tenancy within the building that we have a bit of a misunderstanding with, and that is a rabbi. But we have offered our best to give him space at a below market rate within the building. The remainder of the tenants, which include the iconic Tower Diner, which you'll hear more about maybe as time goes on throughout the hearing, have voluntarily relocated, and they're already in the location. There's a bicycle shop, there's a lawyer. Everybody has agreed to go already. And the rabbi that I mentioned earlier is in fact across the street and in a new location as well. Next slide, please. The next slide really tells the tale, which is unfortunate, of New York City right now, I think, in our housing situation. And I think this tells the tale of how we could fix it. If you can key in and see that the height of some of these buildings here, that they are tall buildings. Unfortunately for us, they were all built 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. Nothing has really been built recently except for the lower left corner, which is that blue building you see, the lower left, maybe a few others, but not really that many. And in fact, what you'll see if you're really focusing on Queens Boulevard is all the development you see is off of Queens Boulevard. Queens Boulevard itself is not been built upon. So you're left with many situations like this, where you have a 1-story building resting among 122-foot tall buildings. As a reminder, we are asking you to build a building that would be 174 feet tall when it is done. So that's, if you wanted to put that in context here. Next slide, we're just going to show you quickly a couple of the pictures of the buildings around us to bring it down on the ground, because it's easy to say it's tall from above, but when you look at it, you'll see the area is no stranger to taller buildings. Next slide, please. The next slide just maps these buildings out in even greater detail along the area. All these buildings, especially in the lower right corner, are big buildings, but more importantly, they're old. They have not been built in at least in my generation, and I'm old. Next slide. This slide shows you the Tower Diner and its iconic status. You can see in the lower left corner, that's a corner of the site. Please don't let the beautiful nature of the cupola up top fool you. It has been attempted to be landmarked on numerous occasions by numerous people, and Landmarks Preservation Commission has rejected it over the years for many different reasons, including the fact that it is in extremely poor condition and ready to fall down. And were it not for this application, it would have come down already, but we didn't want to show any bad faith to anybody and let anybody feel to believe that we were destroying something in the hopes that then it can never be saved. The design of the building, if you look on the right, we've tried to take a cue from that. There is a clock down in the lower right-hand corner of the building. We can expand upon that view and you can see it, but we're happy to play upon that more in the design, and we're happy to include many of the community's desires in the design. And they did ask maybe if we could move the entrance onto Queens Boulevard under the Trilon Theater marquee. The site is very iconic because the Trilon Theater was once there. It hasn't been operational in decades, but that's some of the discussion. If you go to the next slide, this next slide I think is fascinating for the Zoning and Land Use Committee of New York City, because if you take a look at this slide and you probably mimic it, every application I've done that I create this slide for, it never shows a lot of inclusionary housing being created under the inclusionary housing programs that are in place. That's a telling tale. You can create as much inclusionary housing districts as you want. Whether or not somebody builds something is another story. So you can see here, there's really just 3 inclusionary housing developments in the radius we're showing you here. I've done this map on every application I've handled. There's not a lot. And the reason why is it's scary for a developer to take the risk to do this. And that's the state does not offer much in the way of subsidy, nor does the city. So it's a big risk for a developer. So we're happy that the Abramov family is doing it here and creating something. And the next slide shows you the partnerships they're doing it with. We're happy that we're doing it with 32BJ. They are involved and we've signed a contract with them. Hopefully they'll speak today, but if you don't get a chance to hear them today, they will say they are in agreement with us and working with us. We've signed up with them and we're happy to work with them on any project. They don't always want every development, but they've got their standards of the size, but they were interested in this. And we have signed an agreement. We're also happy to report that we have an agreement with Jay Marcus and the Fifth Avenue Committee. which is a very well respected, for those of you who don't know them, the Brooklyn people I'm sure do, and they've now expanded in other parts, obviously in Queens. And also we have been working with the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, and Alvin Shine is our consultant there. So hopefully we're developing the right partnerships. We are committed to minority women-owned business enterprises, as well as working with local trade unions and the community board. Next slide, please. The next slide is just I'm going to ask the presenter to just skip through. Really, the first slide just shows you the low-rise nature. I'm on Queens Boulevard. I'm giving you a slide in the most densely populated, widest avenue we've got to offer in New York City. And I have a one-story diner to present to you that could just as easily be somewhere in New Jersey, in suburban New Jersey. It's calling for more, and I hope you like what we're creating. The slides, you can just keep clicking. People can take a look and see what the site looks like. We can click right through. There's nothing much that's too beautiful there to show you other than the diner, maybe. You could pause right there, and this takes you now into the sum and substance of what we are asking you for. It's an R71 district right now. R71 lets me build to the moon if I have enough lot area. There's no height limit in an R71. Anything with a letter at the end gives me a height limit. The reason I say that is because we're not here to discuss height. The building could be much taller on an as-of-right basis in the R71, but no matter how tall a developer builds a building, it would still be a loser. And that's why they're here asking you for a rezoning. And that's why the site has sat vacant for the better part of the last 80 years. We're asking you for an R8X zoning, which we feel is, my personal opinion, is still too low for Queens Boulevard. I think Queens Boulevard could handle R9. That's my personal opinion. It could create more affordable housing to compensate for what the state and the city can't do. A developer can do if they had more density. But R8X is certainly a very good density to build with. It allows the developer to create, as I said before. Next slide, please. I'll show you the zoning first before I go into it. The left side of this slide, this is the zoning map change. This is what we're asking for you to do. This will be the end result if you should act on it. The left side shows you what the city maps look like right now, the triangle in the middle. It's an R71. The right side shows you an R8X, which is what we're proposing. And it, of course, will have a commercial overlay, which is a C24. Next slide, I think, is something you'll all be very interested in. This is the affordability matrix that we've been presented to you. And you'll notice here that it's option 1, and you'll notice it's creating the 36 affordable apartments that I spoke about. It was important to the community that there be a mix of units, and they weren't very interested in studios. The unit mix is no accident. Years of working with the community. We've been working together for 4 years on this project with the community. The unit mix at the AMI mix that you see, if you pay close attention to the green band in the middle that goes 3 times down in the middle, 40, 60, 100, you'll notice it goes 40, 60, 100. The reason it's jumping up to 100, we have to average at 60 for option 1, but we wanted to provide a response to the community's request to provide as many units as we could at the lower level income band, which is 40. So to skew the numbers, because it's not a skew, it's the wrong word perhaps. The whole thing is an average. To make the average work, we put a couple in. You can see of the units that are at 100%, not a couple. You have 10 units that are at 100%, but you also get 16 units at 40% out of that. That number could be played with and maneuvered. That's an average. This is a discussion we had with the community, and this is a discussion we had with the council person, and that's how we got to these numbers. I'm happy to come back to that after I'm done presenting. I'll be done in 2 more minutes, and then please, thank you for your time. You'll be happy to answer any questions you want. The next few slides, if you can click ahead, are just going to show you the building so you can understand the building itself. You've seen this image already. If you go to the next slide, please. The next slide shows you in context. There you go. This slide is good. The slide you're looking at right here is showing you the side that the residential entrance is going to be on. This is on the right side of the building when you're looking at all the pictures before. It's on the 99th Street side of the building. This intersection, because you can see everything is triangular here and leading into Queens Boulevard, is a nightmare for traffic. Andrew Lorie from Stonefield Engineering is on the phone with us. And Andrew has been working with us, with the community board, and we've pledged to the community board to work with them to create reports to submit to the New York City Department of Transportation as a part of their traffic task force that the community board has established to help support their requests for safer streets here and a safer intersection, including stop signs. That's independent of our building, but that's again part of the partnership we've taken on. And Andrew Lorie is here. He studied that. We've worked with the community on that. And the entrances and exits that you see here on this image are not accidental. Again, done in very close conjunction with the community. And you can see the cafe on the left. To the right of that, you can make out 98-97. That's the entrance. And to the right of that is the parking garage. There by design. I'll note that the residential entrance was also discussed with the community board about moving it to Queens Boulevard under the marquee entrance. And that's another discussion we could have with them. If you can go now to the next slide. The next slide shows you another residential entrance from the 66th Avenue perspective, and shows you it's just a much quieter street on 66th Avenue. So people have the choice of dropping people off at their cars and going into the building on 99th, or they have the choice of coming out on the other side as well. And if you can go to the next slide, please. You can start to see here, the cellar level is not much to look at. It's exactly what you would imagine. And if you can go to the next slide. Next slide gives you the first floor. You can see it's carved up in retail space. It's proposed to have some of that space be available to the rabbi that I mentioned earlier, should he decide to take some. And that's an ongoing discussion. Next slide, please. The second floor of the building is just parking. It's all going to be self-park. There'll be plenty of room. There'll be parking for 45 cars. That's in full compliance with what the zoning requires. And the remainder of the slides are fairly boring in the sense, if you just click here, you can see sections and elevations, which pretty much gives you a black and white imagery of everything you just saw in color. So I don't know if it has much interest to anybody, but it does give you the heights that we just spoke about and all that detail. That is the essence of our presentation. I'd be happy to show you more detail if you wanted it, talk about anything. We have this information. This is really superfluous. It's everything we just spoke about, and it's here just simply for your own edification if you have questions or you'd like us to go further. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Thank you to the panel for the presentation. Just two questions before I turn it over to Councilmember Shulman. I know you discussed this in the presentation regarding the project's design and community board and the borough president's comments regarding it. Could you just go more into detail about the architecture of the Tower Diner and the Trilon Theater that you're going to incorporate in this new render?
Yes, I don't know if the controller of the screen is able to zoom in on this image here and show the corner. What we've agreed to do with the community is there's a clock at that corner right there.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
We've agreed to work with the design of the building with the community board to try to come to something that would be representative of that clock. The clock that's there is a quote unquote placeholder. We've agreed to do similar types of things within the building itself, including imagery within the lobby area, photographs, things like that. The retention of the marquee, as I keep mentioning, that was something that got everybody's interest, including the developers. The developer is a local developer. They live in the area. They built their business in the area of building. So they have a nice relationship. I think they had a great relationship with Councilwoman Kozowitz, and I believe they have a nice relationship with Councilwoman Shulman. So they're very eager to please. So that's the commitment here, is not showing you necessarily what we're showing you necessarily right now, but it is to say that we're eager to work with the community to try to create something there. If they'd like to see more than just a clock, maybe go up to the first floor and create something, or do something at the top, do something to create the iconic stature that they were looking to maintain out of the clock tower, out of the clock tower diner.
Thank you, Eric. Were there any conversations with the diner to see if the diner could possibly take one of the retail spaces?
Every single operator and business and user within that building was offered the chance to come back into the space. Like I said, this has been ongoing for years. Tower Diner already took another space. They're not interested in coming back. They're done with it. They're okay with that. Everybody has made business decisions, and there is no strife in any way, shape, or form, or bad blood between any of the parties involved. With the exception of a little bit of uncertainty with respect to the congregation that's there. But even they've moved out. They've taken a space across the street. So
and the rabbi, what kind of organization does he have?
It's a Jewish religious organization.
Okay.
We happen to be in, I love New York City. When people go to Epcot, I say, why are you going to Epcot? We live in Epcot. So New York City's every single neighborhood is unique. And there happen to be a large percentage of Jewish people in this neighborhood. Everybody knows each other. I believe they've been to Jewish court already over the issue. I believe they've spoken about it at length. There's been a lot of discussions. They just haven't been able to come to an understanding of what the future would be necessarily. So I tell you that only because it's been in the news. CBS News has run an article about it. And if you Google it, you'll see the story. So, we make you alert to it.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I would like to pass yield my time to Councilmember Shulman for any questions. Councilmember Shulman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Riley. And thank you for the very thorough presentation and good faith discussions that we've had. A lot of the questions have been answered, but I do have some. One is in terms of the building trades and the unions, have you had discussions about paying a prevailing wage and meeting the benefit standard of the unions?
We have not had a conversation with them. We have made a commitment to speak with them. The Carpenters Union, I believe, reached out to us at the community board. We said we'd speak to them after we get an approval, and we'd be in a better position to come back to them and see what we had to do. We, of course, did make a deal or an agreement. I shouldn't say a deal. I'm happy to make the agreement with 32BJ. I'm a big believer in 32BJ. The issue with the remainder of union labor in New York City, as you know, it's a difficult conversation to have for all the reasons that we've all spoken about. It's not an easy conversation to have, but we do make the commitment to speak to people, and we definitely have made the hardcore written commitment to commit to union labor and prevailing wages with 32BJ, and we'll continue on in that direction in all of our future developments.
Okay, thank you. And what about pursuing environmentally friendly green building certification?
Yes, we are interested in pursuing a LEED Gold standard or a Platinum standard if we can. Also, the building will be complying with all current regulations at the time. Most likely it will be electric at the time that it's constructed. And we are anxious to try to be as green as we could be, not only for the benefit of the city and the state, but also because there are generous rebates involved for developers when they do take advantage. So we will seek to achieve that.
And do you plan, you talked about MWBE participation.
Yes.
Do you plan to target the borough president's recommended goal of 30%?
Yes.
And will you follow up and provide progress reports to the community board on the hiring commitments?
Yes.
Great. And what sustainability and resiliency measures are incorporated into the building's design and construction?
Well, there's quite a few. There's a green roof measure. There's what are called bioswales at the street level, which will capture some of the rainwater. We will have a high energy heating and cooling system. The windows will be a very high attenuation on the windows, which will a UV rating, which will both repel the heat in the summer and insulate the warmth in the winter. Those are the various things that come into play as time is going on. There's all new sorts of technology that's coming into play with recycled water systems and turning rainwater at least into gray water. We're hoping to explore some of those because I don't know if anybody's looked at their water bill recently, but water is not cheap anymore, and things like that. So we are very anxious. As I said, this is a very diligent professional developer. They are eager to implement the newest and latest techniques. So we're eager to do that.
And what about, in terms of that, what about bike parking, the consideration of that, of adding that?
Yeah, there's plenty of bike parking, and actually it's interesting because we've been talking to a group called UNI, which happens to be a Black-Brown organization, but more importantly than that, he is Shabazz Stewart is his name, and he has created a system of free on-site bike parking for the general public, so that you could use bike parking in pretty much anywhere. He's got it at Domino's Landing, which is the public park, the plaza that opened up. I believe the mayor has been very supportive of him as well. In any event, we've been talking to him about putting a pod. He's got pods, and the pod goes inside the parking area. And if somebody were to park their bike there, they could park their bike there for free. So it's something we've been talking about doing. So the bike parking, there'll definitely be bike parking for the occupants. what I'm talking about now is bike parking for the general public, and that's something we've been talking to the community board about, because as you know, you're on a very active bike path, and there's also a subway platform station right there. So what would be, better than that, to go there and park your bicycle and then go to work every day. So.
No, that's great. And also I wanted to just follow up about the discussions that have been had with the community board about mitigating the development's impact on traffic flow during construction and minimizing construction disruption on Queens Boulevard, including the bike lane and the surrounding community.
Sure. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask Andrew Lorie Andrew, can you just give maybe 3 minutes about what you're thinking to the councilwoman, and everybody can understand the intensity at which you've been approaching this here? And maybe I could ask the presenter to pull up the slide that showed the traffic circulation and movement. But Andrew, you still on the phone?
I'm here, yeah. And for the benefit of the record, this is Andrew Lorie from Stonefield Engineering and Design, applicant's traffic engineer. Eric, I'll do even better than 3 minutes. I might even do 1.5 minutes. So specifically relating to the impact of the project during construction on traffic, we're going to comply with all New York City DOT regulations. We understand the importance of the corridor here, so the city sets forth certain criteria for when you're doing construction on Queens Boulevard. We're well aware of it, and we'll make sure that we maintain all roads, maintain all bike lanes in accordance with the DOT standards.
And Andrew, we've also been working with the community board, and we've to tell a little bit about that so that they understand the effort you've made and the future commitment.
Absolutely. So we did listen and speak with the community board. Some of their concerns were related to some existing traffic congestion in the area and potentially seeking some traffic calming measures that could be implemented regardless of the project. So what we committed to doing is work with the city DOT to really come up with a plan for how to address this. It's nothing related to the project. It's just how can we work with the community to give them a safety improvement.
No, thank you. I just want to say that since we had our preliminary discussions, you've come a long way, and I want to thank you again for the good faith that you've put into this. And I have no other questions at this time, Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. I now invite my colleagues to ask questions. If you have any questions for the applicant panel and are joining us remotely, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council members with questions?
I see no council members with questions at this time, Chair.
There being no future questions, the applicant panel is excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on 98-81 Queens Boulevard proposal?
Yes, there's one member of the public signed up to testify, Marissa Williams. So Marissa, you will have 2 minutes to speak once the chair gives you the go ahead.
Members of the public will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please do not begin until the sergeant at arms has started the clock. You may begin.
Time starts now.
Good morning, Chair Riley and members of the committee. My name is Marissa Williams, and I'm a representative of 32BJ SCIU. I'm here on behalf of my union to express our support for the proposed project at 9881 Queens Boulevard. 32BJ is the largest property service union in the country, representing 85,000 property service workers in New York City, including janitors, security guards, handy persons, and supers that work in buildings similar to this proposed project. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. I'm happy to report that the developer Trilon LLC has made a credible commitment to creating prevailing wage building service jobs at this site. This commitment means that building service workers at this site will have access to family-sustaining wages, retirement, and quality health benefits in a time when New Yorkers need them most. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive. For these reasons, we are in full support of this project. We have full confidence that Trilon LLC will be a responsible employer and presence in this community. For these reasons, we respectfully urge you to approve this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Are there any council members with questions for this panel? If you're joining us remotely, please indicate by using the raise hand button. There being no questions for this panel, this witness panel is now excused. There being no other members of the public who wish to testify on LU 26 and 27 relating to the 98-81 Queens Boulevard proposal, the public hearing is now closed and the items are laid over. I will now open the public hearing on LU 16 and 17 relating to the 97-04 Suffolk Boulevard rezoning proposal in Speaker Adams District in Queens. This application seeks a zoning map amendment to rezone the existing C4-5X district to a C6-3 district and the related zoning text amendment to establish an MIH program area utilizing option 1 and 2 within the special downtown Jamaica district. These actions will facilitate the development of a new affordable housing development for seniors with community facility space planned for a health clinic. For anyone wishing to testify on this item, if you have not already done so, you must register online, and you may do that now by visiting the council website at council.nyc.gov/land use. Once again, that's council.nyc.gov/land use. Council, please call the first panel for this item.
The applicant panel for this item includes David Beer, Kara McAteer, Aaron Verrier, Lorie Miller, Andrew Bernheimer, and Brandon Pietra.
Thank you, Council. Please administer the affirmation.
Applicants, please, I'll call on you individually to answer the following questions. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the subcommittee and in your answers to all council member questions? David Beer?
I do.
Kara McAteer?
Yes, I do.
Aaron Verrier?
I do.
Lorie Miller?
I do.
Andrew Bernheimer?
Do.
And Brandon Pietra.
I do.
Thank you. For the benefit of the viewing public, if you need an accessible version of this presentation, please send an email request to landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that's landusetestimony@council.nyc.gov. And now the applicant team may begin. Panelists, as you begin, I'll just ask you to please reinstate your name and organization for the record. You may begin.
I'm David Beer from Breaking Ground, and I will begin this presentation on a proposed rezoning for 97-04 Sutphin Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens. The rezoning will facilitate the new construction of a mixed-use project that will have affordable senior housing as well as a healthcare clinic. Next. The project partners are Breaking Ground, Community Healthcare Network, and Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica. Next. Breaking Ground is a not-for-profit developer of senior housing, affordable housing for families, and supportive housing. We operate over 4,000 units in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, upstate New York, and Connecticut. We currently operate 2 affordable senior buildings, and a third is in construction. Next. Over our 30 years, we've developed 16 affordable senior and supportive housing buildings, and 13 of those buildings are in New York City. An additional 2 buildings in New York City are under construction. Next. The project site is located on the southwest corner of 97th Avenue and Sutphin Boulevard, a few blocks south of the Long Island Railroad train station. Next. In the residential component of the project, there will be 173 units created in a 15-story building with a mix of 1-bedroom and studio apartments. 1 unit will be set aside for a live-in superintendent. All 172 rental units will be for low-income seniors. 52 units will be supportive housing for homeless seniors aged 55 and over. The remaining 120 units will be for seniors age 62 and over with incomes up to 50% of the area median income. Community Board 12 applicants will receive a preference for 60 units. All rents will be subsidized by a project-based Section 8 contract, which will enable the project to serve extremely low-income seniors. There will not be any minimum income test for applicants. Social services will be provided on site in the residential part of the building as well as in the healthcare clinic. Breaking Ground is the developer of the project and will be the property manager, who will also provide case management services to the senior residents. Next. This time I'd like to ask Erin Verrier from Community Healthcare Network to talk a little bit about CHN and its role in the project.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So I represent Community Healthcare Network, and we are a non-for-profit network of 14 federally qualified health centers here in New York City. Our Sutphin Boulevard Health Center has actually served the area since 1978, and we offer low-cost primary care to 60,000 New Yorkers annually across the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. At this site, with this new property, we will be able to significantly expand our health clinic and provide services not only to building residents, but the surrounding community. Next slide, please. So this new clinic will replace our existing 6,600 square foot FQHC. But with the new site, we will be able to have 15,000 new square feet. And this will allow us to significantly expand the services that we can provide, as well as the number of patients we can serve. So we provide adult medicine, pediatric, adolescent medicine, geriatrics, mental and behavioral health services, and so much more. So we really provide a full comprehensive set of primary care services. The proposed financing for us will be through new market tax credits. Next slide, please. And I will pass this over to Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lorie Miller, the Executive Director of Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica, Inc. I'm happy to be here as well. The organization was founded in 1974, primarily to assist homeowners in the South Eastern Queens communities with improving their homes. We're committed to preserving, protecting, and revitalizing the neighborhoods of Southeastern Queens, as well as some of the surrounding communities. We provide housing education, counseling, financial services to low and moderate income residents. We're a HUD certified housing counseling agency. We also offer pre-purchase education for first-time home buyers, foreclosure intervention and prevention services, and we have an affordable home repair financial assistance program, which is comprised of grants and loans, and general financial capability or wellness education is also offered. We provide tenant education workshops. We cover tenants' rights, fair housing laws, rent exemptions. We assist residents apply for the city's affordable housing lotteries. And we also do general, we recently have been working with the Emergency Rental Assistance Program to help folks who have been impacted by COVID and are in arrears on their rents. NHS's role in the project will be to perform outreach and marketing for the project and to offer financial literacy training to the building residents. Next.
At this time, I'd like to ask our architect, Andy Bernheimer from Bernheimer Architects, to talk a little bit about the project design and the specific land use actions that are being requested.
Thanks, David, and good afternoon. I'm Andy Bernheimer, principal of Bernheimer Architecture. We're a design practice in Brooklyn where we dedicate our energy to creating sensitive, sustainable, and transformational affordable housing. I want to thank the council for giving us this time to present the design for the project at 97-04 Sutphin Boulevard. So we've been focused on the local context, addressing massing issues that respond to the changing neighborhood to create a design that continues the growth of a safe and engaging streetscape, one which also satisfies the requirements of the special downtown Jamaica district. The building is articulated in three pieces: a 5-story mast along 97th Avenue, which holds the primary entry to the community healthcare network space, This entry is at the primary corner of Sutphin and 97th in this view. A second lower 4-story piece along Sutphin, which contains the residential entry. And there's a third taller topping mass set back from the street, which uses varied brick textures to add detail to this portion of the architecture. If we go to the next slide. Here you can see the neighborhood context, the bus lines in blue, which run north-south along Sutphin, and the corner presence of this new building. You can also see the height articulation of the 3 separate masses in the base and the tower. The goal is to break down the overall architecture into visually intriguing pieces and to address the street level experience with lower volumes scaled to that experience. Next slide. Here is a plan that shows the ground floor programming. In pink is the space for CHN's healthcare facility. CHN also has several thousand square feet of space in a lower subgrade level to fill out their overall square footage. And at the southern end of the site along Sutphin is the resident entry, that's the area in yellow, where the reception and a communal amenity space, as well as a stair up to a 2nd floor terrace. Next slide. So we are looking to extend the extant C63 zoning that is mapped to the north of the site to this block. The project sits on the south side of 97th, and current C63 zoning ends on the north side, just above the red star. You can see a thick black line running down the center of the street facing this site. The block to the north is already zoned for higher density, and we're looking to extend it across to this block. Next slide. So the proposed rezoning extends that C63 zoning that's immediately adjacent across 97th. The residential equivalent will be R9, which allows up to 8 FAR with inclusionary housing. That rezoning would permit an increase of the units for low-income seniors from 96 to 173. The text amendment would map MIH options 1 and 2, and we would also not need any on-site parking under the existing or proposed zoning. And I'll pass it back to David.
Thank you, Andy. Next. So a little bit about local hiring goals for the project. Breaking ground will, during the construction phase, require its general contractor to hire local residents for 50% of the new construction jobs created by the project. Breaking ground and Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica will ensure that job postings for new construction hires are widely distributed in the community. All applicants from the community for new construction jobs will receive an interview. Breaking ground will submit semi-annual reports to Community Board 12 regarding construction local hiring during the approximately 2.5-year construction period. The construction is subject to prevailing wages. Next. At the permanent phase, Breaking Ground commits to a local hiring goal of 50% of the housing operations positions. And we estimate there will be about 25 new positions, permanent positions created by the project. Breaking Ground will submit a report to the Community Board on local hiring for permanent positions within 6 months after the completion of the project. Residential building operation employees will be represented by DC 37. Next. Participation by minority and women-owned business enterprise will be a requirement of the project's funding sources. Breaking Ground will submit a detailed plan to the city and state agencies on how it will meet the goals set by the agencies. We will also submit quarterly reports to the agencies tracking our progress toward MWB goals during construction. Breaking Ground's general contractor has an excellent track record of meeting or exceeding MWB goals. Next. With respect to parking, as Andy mentioned, none is required by either the existing or proposed zoning. Surface parking was not feasible here because of the large ground floor healthcare space, and underground parking would have been prohibitively expensive. Breaking Ground did commit to Community Board 12 to provide up to 12 subsidized parking spaces in a local lot or garage where residents would pay out of pocket no more than $100 per month. Next. We plan to close on the construction financing and start construction in the fall of this year. And that would put us on track to complete the project and commence occupancy in late 2024. That concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you to the panel. I just have a couple of questions before I see if any of the committee have any, council member on the committee have any questions. Regarding the parking, can you tell us about more for the record, how you arrived at the number of subsidized parking spaces you will provide for this project? And do you know where these off-site parking spaces will be located or how close to the development site you intend to have them?
Yes. We estimated that, well, we assumed that none of the homeless seniors will have a need for a vehicle. And so that leaves 120 non-homeless senior apartments, and we took 10% of that number to come up with the 12. Our experience in our own portfolio, we have over 900 seniors and very, very few have vehicles. But we did want to make this accommodation to the community board because it was a major concern of theirs. We have not yet identified the local garage or parking lot, but there is an underground garage located 2 blocks away on 90, or 3 blocks away on 94th Avenue in Sudfin, and that would be the logical place to lease spaces for residents in our building.
Thank you. Will any sustainability and resiliency measures be incorporated into the building's design and construction?
I will start by saying we plan to comply with Enterprise Green for the project, and I will ask Andy Bernheimer to speak more specifically to some of the sustainability features of the building.
Yeah, thanks, David. On top of that, Enterprise Green Communities, we are designing the building to passive house level certification. So it's an extremely high performing building envelope, energy efficient. And on top of that, we also have a photovoltaic array going on the roof to generate energy. So those are the two very significant sustainability and resiliency features. The passive house certification is an incredibly robust requirement for high building performance.
Thank you, Andrew. That's all the questions I had. I now invite my colleagues to ask any questions. If you have any questions for the applicant panel, please use the raise hand button on the participant panel. Council, are there any council member questions?
Yes, Councilmember Lewis has questions.
Okay, Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Chair Riley. I have a statement and 2 interesting or weird questions. So while Breaking Ground has highlighted their experience as operators and providers in social services in New York City, from my experience, services in other parts of the city regarding homeless services in particular has been poor. So I would hope that if my colleagues move forward with this project, that Breaking Ground could do their due diligence, and we can also hold them accountable to ensure that they're providing superb support services in the district that they're seeking to expand services. And I wanted to ask, would Breaking Ground be open to prioritizing, I saw in your presentation DC 37, but would you be open to prioritizing labor unions like 32BJ and building trades for this project? And my second question is, how often will you be providing reports regarding the MWBE component? Because you mentioned the semi-annual reports, but not on the MWBE component. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. The MWBE reporting to city and state agencies will be quarterly. Our general contractor will be a union shop. We have already entered into an agreement with DC 37 for that is agency wide, and so I don't believe we would be able to work with another union at this site. Did I respond to all your questions, council member?
Yes and no, not the way I was hoping to get a response, but for the record, you did respond to the question. So hope to have an offline conversation with you all, but thank you.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Council, are there any more council members with questions?
Chair Riley, Chair Lewis was the only council member with questions at this time.
There being no questions for this applicant panel, they're excused. Council, are there any members of the public who wish to testify on 97-04 Suffolk Boulevard proposal?
No members of the public, Chair Riley, for this one. So we can close the hearing because no one signed up to testify.
All right, just for a second. There being no members of the public who wish to testify on LU 16 and 17 for the 9704 Suffolk Boulevard proposal, the public hearing is now closed and items are laid over. That concludes today's business. I would like to thank the members of the public, my colleagues, subcommittee council, land use and other council staff, and the Sergeant at Arms for participating in today's meeting. This meeting is hereby adjourned.